Allison. I'm the Executive Director of New Mexico Wild. It's my real pleasure to welcome New Mexico's entire congressional delegation to this celebration. I also wanted to thank all of you in the audience for joining. This is a big crowd, so I think we have a sold-out show. As I noted, we're here this afternoon, of course, to celebrate the historic passage of the Great American Outdoors Act. So I know this is a virtual party, but we do want to have some fun. So jokes and stories are very much welcomed and encouraged. I think we all need and deserve a party. At the end, the audience is going to be given a survey and we're going to rate how funny each member was. So let's see how competitive they are. Before we get going though, I wanted to recognize the co-hosts of this event. It's a long list, but please bear with me. These exceptional organizations have been working for years and years to achieve this success, and it's important. So you can hold your applause until the end. That was a joke. So in alphabetical order, Audubon, New Mexico, Conservation Voters of New Mexico, Continental Divide Trail Association, Defenders of Wildlife, Friends of the Organ Mountains Desert Peaks National Monument, Las Cruces Green Chamber of Commerce, National Parks Conservation Association, the Nature Conservancy, New Mexico Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, New Mexico Wildlife Federation, Nuestra Tierra Conservation Project, Partnership for Responsible Business, the Rio Grande chapter of the Sierra Club, Trout Unlimited, the Trust for Public Lands, and the Wilderness Society. So we can give them a big round of applause.
Right.
So I'm going to make just remarks for just a minute. So we're here to celebrate perhaps one of the most sustained conservation efforts of the last 50 years in a truly remarkable story that involves everyone on this call. This is a story too that had an ending that was a bit strange and I know truly confusing to many of our members and the public. For me though, it does underscore a few key lessons. One of them is it's just absolutely critical to do the work of building support for our values, no matter how unlikely it may seem at the time. We have seen time and time again that we need to be ready when a political opportunity presents itself, because frequently those opportunities are unpredictable. So things seem impossible until they're done, and we're happy to be done with this. The second thing is, public lands is truly one of those issues that enjoys overwhelming support by Americans, no matter their political affiliation. We've certainly seen that during the pandemic. Certainly this bill, the Great American Outdoors Act, is an example of that. And then finally, I just wanted to say that that doesn't happen by accident either. It doesn't mean we can rest on our laurels. That support comes because of all the efforts from everyone on this call each and every day. So thank you. So enough from me. Here's the plan for this afternoon. So each member is going to have 5 minutes to make their remarks or share a story or a joke about the bill's passage and anything else they'd like to say. Then we're going to go back around in order so that they can recognize a community member whose actions helped pass the Great American Outdoors Act. And finally, if there's time, we will have a few questions from the audience. So let's get to it. I'd like to start with our senior Senator, Tom Udall, who is on a hike right now and not able to join us by video, but he is on the phone. Senator Udall, can you hear me? And would you like to kick us off?
You bet, Mark. Can you hear me and all the delegation members? Yeah, okay.
You sound great.
Thank you so much. And I am on a hike, but I'm going to be on top of the mountain, but I hope still listening to you. First of all, I'd like to start by thanking the 17 plus groups that you listed off, and I know there are probably many others, and all of the activists. We couldn't do it without you. And first, just a story for a moment about my father, Stuart Udall, when he was Secretary of Interior under President Kennedy and President Johnson. He was really there at the creation of the LWCF in the 1960s. And I learned from him that big ideas usher in far-reaching change. And the dream always was for full funding from the very beginning of this, from the big commission headed by Lawrence Rockefeller. And so finally, we are fulfilling that big dream. And here we are 50 years later with a full and permanently funded LWCF. This truly is a great celebration. I've worked toward this day for my entire time in Congress. As an appropriator, I was able to beef up the funding along the way for the LWCF despite opposition from others in Congress. Actually, today, the LWCF is at a 15-year high because of the appropriations work that appropriators have done. But full and permanent funding eluded us until today. But finally, we had the stars align and Democrats and Republicans came together to make this happen. And I want to thank my colleagues up here in front of you that you're looking at right now for all of their work. Martin for working through the committee, Ben Ray for his role in the House leadership, Deb and Xochitl for their unyielding support. And there are many special, beautiful places in New Mexico that have benefited from LWCF. But one of the most recent memories is attending the groundbreaking for the Valle del Oro. Just south of Albuquerque, it's the first urban national wildlife refuge in the Southwest. Lots of people were there that day, and especially friends of the Valle del Oro and residents of South Albuquerque who had helped spearhead the project. And everybody remembers that land was Price's dairy land. It runs along the Rio Grande, and so it attracts tremendous bird life, including sandhill cranes, the great roadrunner, and the American kestrel. The $6 million contributed from LWCF helped make this urban oasis a reality. Valle del Oro represents the future in conservation. This public space introduces young people, often Hispanic young people with limited means and limited access to nature, to the outdoors. So this place isn't just about protecting the environment and birds, it also helps right the scales of environmental justice and can help spark in Albuquerque youth a lifetime connection to the natural world. That's what LWCF is all about. Thank you, and back to you, Mark, or recognizing if you want us to introduce Senator Heinrich's been an incredible partner. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with introductions because I think we want to get to your program and move along. But Martin, you've been terrific and played a great role. He's been terrific working with him. I remember we worked on the Ojo, up in northern New Mexico. We went horseback riding at the Sabinoso Wilderness, and we went for 8 hours. We almost killed one horse doing it, but I knew he was a rugged guy. So I give you Senator Martin Heinrich.
Thanks, Senator. And I think it's a great testament that you're out hiking today. That's what this is all about. I am still sore from that horsebacking trip into Sabinoso, and despite the fact that it was years ago. But when you think about LWCF, it really does run the gamut from your local park in your neighborhood, your kid's soccer field, all the way to the Valles Caldera National Preserve that we purchased with Land and Water Conservation Funds. And the great thing about the Great American Outdoors Act is not only did we finally accomplish what many people thought was politically impossible by fully funding LWCF, but we also included an enormous infusion of infrastructure dollars for campgrounds and trails and all the things that we care about. That started out as just a Park Service focus, and one of the things I'm really proud of is that I was able to negotiate with people like Corey Gardner to broaden that, to increase the funding, and to bring in our national wildlife refuges, our national forests, and our BLM lands, which are all critical here in New Mexico. I'll tell you a quick story about this bill. One, it wouldn't have been politically possible in the past because we had the wrong name for the bill. And once we realized that all we had to do to get this to get signed by the president was to put the word great in the title, things turned around. So we went from the White House zeroing out the Land and Water Conservation Fund to the White House egging us on to pass it. And a big part of that, I kid you not, was putting the word great in Great American Outdoors. The other thing I'll leave you with is there was opposition to this bill. It wasn't smooth sailing. And there were some folks in the Senate in particular who put up every institutional and procedural roadblock they could. And to their credit, they figured out on a Thursday that a lot of senators had left town. I was not one of those, but quite a few folks had already headed home for the weekend, and they forced a procedural vote, something called a budget point of order that was going to start at midnight and run to 1 a.m. And I realized that the Democratic whip had gone home because of a police emergency, basically, in Illinois. And so I went next door to the Senate office next to mine, which is the ranking member of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, Joe Manchin, and I banged on the door until his chief of staff answered, and I said, Lance, get your boss on the phone. We're going to whip this thing. We've got a bunch of senators out of town already, and if we lose this vote, we could lose the bill. And literally, we spent the next 5 hours haranguing everyone we could to come back from the airport. We had former secretaries of Interior calling members saying, you can't leave town. We've got to win this vote. We woke a few senators.
Hey, Martin, you're breaking up a little bit. I don't know if you can hear me. He was just getting to the punchline. Martin, can you hear me? We had some audio trouble there for a little bit. Let's come back to Senator Heinrich in just a minute. We'll see if we can get that sorted out. I know he's working on a title change, but let's go to the assistant speaker next.
Well, that was my joke. I was messing with Martin's Wi-Fi there, so that way I could jump in sooner. And so I just sent him a text as well. Sorry about that, Martin. I've been working to expand our reaches to make sure that we can stay get better connected. Mark, look, I can't tell you thanks enough. And as Senator Tom Udall pointed out, to all of the organizations, each and every one of you, and the incredible members across the state of New Mexico and across America that made this happen. But truly, without the work of Senator Heinrich and Senator Udall, my goodness, what they did to move this along. And I don't know about Chairwoman and Congresswoman Deb Holland and Chairwoman and Congresswoman Xochitl Torres Small, but I certainly benefited from a lot of phone calls from my brother Senator Heinrich and Senator Udall, especially upon the passage of this important bill. And as you know, Mark, one of the most important things that had to happen in the House was for this bill to move without being amended. And that was tough because there are a lot of really good bills out there that we were hoping might get considered, or maybe we could continue to work together to get included. And that's what the conversation was with Senator Heinrich and Senator Udall. So, you know, the funny story I always am able to include for important lands packages, and this is something that Congresswoman Xochitl Torres Small and Congresswoman Holland, I think, have learned to appreciate, is we're able to reach out to Chairman Grijalva. And I also want to thank Raul Grijalva, who's the chair of the Natural Resources Committee. He played an instrumental role in working with Speaker Pelosi and Leader Hoyer to get this adopted. But Martin knows that when he gave me a call and he told me about the importance of trying to get this adopted without getting amended, I shared with him that I'd be honored to reach out to Chairman Grijalva, and I know Senator Udall and Heinrich called him up as well, as did Xochitl and Deb. My secret weapon with Raul is always, a lot of people don't know this, but his wife is from Peñasco, New Mexico. And so anytime that I've got a little problem with Raul, I call all the families up in Peñasco, and they start calling him, and he knows that the New Mexico delegation is busy at work because he's getting inundated with calls from home. So I don't want you all abusing that privilege with Chairman Grijalva, but you all need to know that we've got a little bit of power in this little bitty town up in the mountains here in New Mexico. Truly, Mark, as I just want to say thanks to just a couple more folks. You know, we know that there's, in the 3rd Congressional District alone, I think $60 million in deferred maintenance and work that will benefit from this important piece of legislation. Not just the 3rd Congressional District. The entire state of New Mexico, from every corner, is going to benefit. As Martin laid out the importance from, you know, parks and soccer fields all the way to the most important and majestic public lands that we have to protect. And I know we're going to do this a little bit later, but I just want to make sure I'm able to include this early on. I especially want to thank all of the veterans, and especially from Vote Vets, who played such an important role. And this is something Senator Heinrich has understood. He's worked with so many of the veterans organizations right here in New Mexico, and so many of you that were part of this, to make sure that we're growing the family and that we're benefiting from all of the stories and the incredible advocacy that come from brothers and sisters and friends and neighbors. But I want to thank especially Vote Vets who recognize the importance of LWCF. I think they mobilized about 600,000 veterans across the country to make sure they were calling members to get this one passed and adopted. So just thank you so much. And then lastly, I know we'll get to this a little bit later, sir, but just in case I lose internet access, I've got a good connection now, so I'm not going to move. My special thank you for just recognizing someone as just San Miguel County Commissioner Max Trujillo. You know, a lot of you know Max. He's a small businessman. He's a county commissioner from San Miguel County. We just had a call this week where he's working on some important projects. But most importantly, he's an avid outdoors person as well. And he's an incredible spokesperson. He's an incredible teacher and mentor. And he loves New Mexico. He loves our land. He loves our water. He loves our traditional way of life. And so, Max, just want to say thank you. I know you're on this call. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for making a difference. And thank you for inspiring us every day. And with that, Mark, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you so much, everyone. Look forward to the conversation throughout the rest of the day.
Thank you, Congressman. I think you're being very gracious and a bit modest. I have it on good authority that at a critical moment, you went to the rest of leadership to get that on the suspension calendar, to get that on the floor of the House with no amendment. So I know you were personally involved, so thank you very much. Let's go to Congresswoman Torres Small.
Well, I usually almost always defer to Congresswoman Chairwoman Deb Holland, especially who has a very relevant committee, subcommittee chairwomanship for this legislation. But But I will take the opportunity to get to introduce her afterwards in that case. I am just so deeply grateful for this celebration because it was decades in the making. And one of the pivotal moments for me was getting to talk with Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, whose husband was key in establishing the Land and Water Conservation Fund decades ago. And so this has been something that has been in the works since before I was born, but that I have benefited from my entire life. And whether it was getting married in the Mesilla Valley Bosque State Park, which is LWCF funded, whether it was both missing my first clay pigeon and hitting my first clay pigeon at Butterfield Trail shooting range, or whether it was key access points for future opportunities to share for future generations. And I'll just tell a quick story related to that. Growing up, one of my favorite trails in the Oregons was Achenbach Canyon. And I remember as part of our church group, my parents were leading a 5-day backpacking trip out somewhere else. But in order to prep the girls to get ready for that hike and that backpacking trip, we took them up Achenbach Canyon. And if anyone's done it, there's a steep climb at the beginning. And if you're not expecting that, it's a little stark. And so I remember just being really proud of myself that I was used to that climb, and a lot of those other, we were getting everybody else used to what that would be like. But unfortunately, after some significant development in the area, there were several years where we lost access to Achenbach Canyon. And only recently there's been negotiations with private landholders. There's still private land on that trail that has that allows us to continue that hike because of an agreement. But now with additional funds through Land and Water Conservation Fund, we've got an opportunity to really make sure that that is protected for generations in the future, and to work with private landowners to help build that solution as well. And that's just one key example, whether it's your favorite hunting spot and the access that you need there, whether it's maintenance at Labs Pool, which is just across the way from me and the house that I grew up in. All of these different community treasures really were made possible because of Land and Water Conservation Fund. And being able to continue to maintain them will be crucial for our future as well. So for me, the Great American Outdoors Act is about common ground. It's about the common ground that we share in terms of our public lands, and it's about building that common ground with unlikely partners. And that was something I remember in terms of the first time I think I jumped for joy in seeing a tweet from President Donald Trump when he signaled his interest in the legislation. And within the span of 5 minutes, I got 6 different texts and a call from Councilor Gabe Vasquez talking about what our future opportunities were going to be to just jump into action. So with that, I want to highlight, and I couldn't pick just one volunteer who was crucial in this. That's what happens when you have a great success. You have lots of wonderful parents. And so for this, I'm just so grateful to have worked with my colleagues, Senator Udall and Senator Heinrich. So grateful to have worked with Chairwoman Deb Holland and her leadership in working with Leader Hoyer as well to get it on, as well as Assistant Speaker Ben Ray Lujan, who absolutely was fundamental in getting this on the consent calendar. And for advocates across New Mexico, Mark, thank you for all of your work. Gabe Vasquez for all of your tireless efforts. Patrick Nolan, Theresa Martinez, Ray Trejo, just to name a few. And then lastly, John Cornell from Sierra County, who's been an incredible volunteer and advocate for New Mexico's public lands. He wears a lot of hats, but notably John is the president of Doñana County Associated Sportsmen and co-chairman of Southwest Consolidated Sportsmen. And he worked behind the scenes to gain support for LWCF and other conservation priorities, specifically through the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, which helped greatly to secure that crucial bipartisan support for LWCF. And with that, it's my honor to get to turn it over to another leader in this, Chairwoman Deb Holland. Thank you so much for your advocacy on this and in building common ground for all of us.
Thank you. Thank you, Jill. And yes, all those wonderful memories you have. Getting married, wow, out there, that's wonderful. So, you know, I was just thinking here, I was just a young girl when the LWCF, you know, started, 1965. I feel like, you know, as a kid, did I know that? No, I didn't care what laws were in place. I didn't care who was wrangling over, you know, money in the Appropriations Committee and what Republicans were against it and Democrats were for it. All I cared about was being outdoors with my parents, with my dad, who was adamant about our place in the outdoors. My dad grew up on a farm. His family, his grandparents immigrated here from Norway in 1881. That's where the Holland comes from, in case anyone ever wondered that. And he was an environmentalist, whether he realized it or not. He taught us to respect and love the outdoors. I mean, if I had told you how many times we were outside, you know, picnicking or hiking when it started pouring rain and he didn't care. He just was like, oh, little rain never hurt anybody, right? You're lucky to be out there. So I want to say that we have an obligation to future generations. And if we are fortunate enough to be in leadership positions where we can vote on legislation such as this, we better take that opportunity. We better think about the kids who are born today, who are, you know, the future generations who are going to carry on the work that we really need to have carried on. Because without our planet, we don't have anything. We have absolutely nothing. So so happy to be here and listen to everyone. Sorry, I can't, there we go. Okay, I just wanted to, of course, as the chair of the National Parks, Forests, and Public Land Subcommittee, we get to speak to a lot of stakeholders. We get to hear a lot of folks. We get to have hearings where folks come in and testify about how important these places are. And not only to our emotional or our spiritual well-being, but there's actually hard financial benefits to ensuring that we have a really strong and good environment, right? People depend on that healthy environment to make a living, whether they're teaching you how to fly fish or taking you on a raft or a rowboat or whatever it is. And so I was honored to be in that position where I was able to maybe get the ball started to where assistant speaker could be, sort of close the deal on making sure that this legislation went to the floor when it did. So I just, and rightly so, none of us pass legislation on our own. I know how many volunteers, how many advocates, how many activists, how many of you out there have worked for decades and decades to make sure that we can have this piece of legislation that means so much. In my district, the LWCF has supported the Valle del Oro National Wildlife Refuge, the Petroglyph National Monument, Tingley Beach Recreation Area, the Elena Gallegos Open Space Picnic Area, and the Martinez Town Park. These agencies will now be able to aggressively address deferred maintenance, improve visitor services, and support tribal communities in places like Carlsbad Caverns, White Sands National Park, Chaco Culture National Historic Park, El Malpais National Monument. So I look forward to all the work that we have ahead of us. And I really wanted to, so this is about my fourth celebration of the Great American Outdoors Act. And that's wonderful, but you know what? They've all been on Zoom. None of them have been out on the trail. So I was complaining when Xochitl was on the last one. So I am bound and determined to make sure I get out on a trail sometime soon. I'm envious of Senator Udall right now, who's making it to the top of the mountain. But I did want to thank Theresa Martinez, the executive director of the Continental Divide Trail Coalition. She and the Continental Divide Trail Coalition are a perfect example of how LWCF benefits New Mexico's economy, particularly the economies of small rural communities. Theresa and her team went above and beyond to identify LWCF projects along the Continental Divide Trail and then gathered support for these projects from local small businesses and gateway communities. Because these business owners see firsthand the positive economic impacts of Continental Divide Trail hikers, it comes as a little surprise that many are passionate advocates for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Theresa recently completed a survey of small business owners, and a full 98% of respondents support providing dedicated full funding for the LWCF. So thank you, Theresa. Thank you to everyone, to all the Continental Divide Trail Coalition for all of their hard work to support the passage of the Great American Outdoors Act and the Outdoor Economy Act in New Mexico. And Senator Heinrich, I am so glad it has the word great in the title. That's really, that's enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Congresswoman Holland's my representative, and sometimes, virtually every time she speaks, she makes me tear up, so thank you. We did want to recognize some great Americans that made the Great American Outdoors Act possible, but I wanted to go back to Senator Heinrich for a little bit. Senator, you broke up a little bit with your audio. I think you were just about ready to get to a punchline. I think you were calling folks to maybe wake them up, but do you want to spend a few minutes wrapping up your segment?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, we might have had to have roused a few members of the Senate out of bed for that procedural vote. And I'm sure it wasn't Senator Feinstein and Senator Leahy. But we got the job done. And I apologize for my internet connection. And you can guarantee that all of this incredible delegation, from Congresswoman Holland to Congresswoman Xochitl Torres Small to the Assistant Speaker to Senator Udall, will continue to fight for better broadband for the state of New Mexico. But I guess I'll leave it with my great American who did so much for this legislation, who is Carrie Hamblin down in Las Cruces. She's president and CEO of the Green Chamber down there. She was one of the true champions to establish the Organ Mountains Desert Peaks National Monument, to help us pass a whole host of new wilderness areas within that national monument. And she worked just as tirelessly to push for full funding for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And when you hear about all the folks that my colleagues have highlighted, you just realize what an incredible treasure we have in New Mexico of people who will give huge portions of their life to do something meaningful like this. And this incredible delegation that you got to hear from, this incredible team, is grateful to all of you who made this happen.
Thank you, Senator. So we jumped right into kind of recognizing some of the great Americans, and I want to set up this next segment here. But perhaps since I think the rest of the delegation has gone, we can see if Senator Udall still has a signal and would like to highlight anybody in particular, and then we can move on to, there's a couple folks that appear to have crashed our Zoom screen, so we'll go to them next. Senator Udall?
Mark, you still have me?
Sure do, you sound great.
Okay, my LWCF volunteer is Ernie Atencio. Ernie's the Southwest Regional Director for the National Parks and Conservation Association. You know, across our nation, we have $19 billion worth of deferred maintenance on existing public lands. And in New Mexico alone, we have a $121 million backlog where work needs to be done at great places, wonderful places like Carlsbad Caverns, White Sands National Park, Chaco Canyon National Historical Park, Gila Cliff Dwellings, Bandelier, the list goes on. And no one has been a stronger or more effective advocate on making sure public lands are in good order, have the right maintenance, than Ernie Atencio up there in Taos, New Mexico. Ernie is Southwest Regional Director for the National Parks and Conservation Association. He had his boots on the ground as a National Park Ranger at Mesa Verde, the Grand Canyon and Bandelier National Monument. He's a cultural anthropologist and a writer, and conducted field research, and a powerful advocate for our national parks. The Great American Outdoors Act allocates $9.5 billion over 5 years to begin to tackle the backlog, fix roads and trails, renovate crumbling buildings, repair aging water systems. Thank you to Ernie and his team for their work to make sure our national parks and other public lands are accessible and usable by the American people. And the last little story I want to tell about Ernie, he used to work in a program that was called Hoods in the Woods. And he used to take the, so whenever you see him, say, what's the deal about that Hoods in the Woods? And who was the hood? Was it you? Or was it the young people you were taking out? And you'll get one of those big Ernie smiles, which is always wonderful to see. So thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator. That was great. So, you know, I think we all know that success has 1,000 mothers and fathers, but there are certain folks, and you've recognized some of them already, that it'd just be impossible to kind of imagine this being successful without them. And so I wanted to introduce my colleague, Garrett Beneclausen, who's on the screen now for this next segment to recognize someone in particular. Garrett?
Thanks, Mark, and thanks to all the remarkable congressional delegates who we're all so proud of, and our conservation community is just, I think it's a model for the whole nation, and we just get amazing things done, and I'm just so proud to be part of an amazing team. The person I'm going to introduce, it's interesting, Senator Heinrich talked about whipping the caucus to get these things done, and really, if we were to have a majority whip in the conservation community, it would be Howard Gross, who, whenever he calls me, I have PTSD of LWCF. He was just so relentless well over a decade. And I could shingle my house with paraphernalia that was created by and driven by the remarkable Howard Gross, who deserves so much credit, who coalesced the conservation community, got us to DC to lobby, really pushed us. He was such an important part of the success of this. And when we all never wanted to hear the word LWCF again, he was the one who was the cheerleader for this thing. So I just want to honor Howard's remarkable work and his role that he played in this. So important to be our #1 conservation cheerleader and majority LWCF whip in the conservation community.
Thank you, Garrett. I really appreciate your kind words and your friendship. I want to touch on 2 big reasons why we are able to celebrate today. First is the powerful way that New Mexicans from diverse backgrounds, and many on this call, many have been mentioned, whether it's sports people, the business community, tribal and Hispano leaders, veterans, just local elected officials, up to statewide elected officials, conservationists, and so many others, together advocated for the funding needed to take care of our public lands and local parks. And they all brought their own diverse perspectives. And, together, New Mexico has a small population, but together our voices were heard. And that really leads to the second reason I want to touch on today, which is our amazing congressional delegation and your hard work and your commitment to reaching the end zone. We really do have the best congressional delegation in the nation with amazing staff. And I'm honored to be represented by you and to know you're representing my family as well, and families all around our state. To put what's been accomplished into context, take a moment to think about all of the public good that LWCF has led to over the last half century while being underfunded. And now imagine what we're going to be able to do with 2 to 3 times that funding consistently over the next 50 years, and not having to put all of the energy into fighting to get that funding, that it's going to be there. So, this is a shining star for our future. I'm proud and humbled to be a part of the community that has achieved this. So big elbow bumps for everyone. And thanks for inviting me today.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Howard. Thanks, Garrett. So I think we're about 45 minutes deep. If the delegation has just a few more minutes, we do have a few questions. Let me see if I can pull those up a little bit. And I don't know if folks want to raise their hand or if I should just call on someone. Let's see here. Let's start with Senator Udall, if we still have him. And just the question is, what aspects of the Great American Outdoors Act excites you the most? Senator Udall, do we still have you? Why don't we go to Senator Heinrich with the same question?
Thanks, Mark. You know, I guess I would say one of the things that really excites me is we have this huge, diverse, beautiful state. And a lot of the public lands are concentrated in specific portions of it. Now we have an opportunity and a tool to make sure that every kid in New Mexico should be within walking distance of a neighborhood park, and that we should have public lands that can be used for hiking and camping and all those other activities that people in New Mexico love in every corner of the state. And there are some places where there really aren't places to do that right now. And now we have a way to fix that.
Awesome, thank you. Assistant Speaker, we've had a lot of public land victories lately. What do you think has led to such bipartisan support for those bills?
Look, when you have folks like Senator Heinrich and Senator Udall willing to take a Trump-appointed Republican Secretary of the Interior on an 8-hour horseback ride until they would relent to find some support there, that's just one of the little secrets. I think it's a willingness to pull more people in, to truly reach across and establish those strong relationships, bringing in different perspectives and viewpoints. I still remember the success celebrated around the Rio Grande del Norte, walking into that room where Ken Salazar, Secretary of Interior, came in, and someone in the front of the room asked a question that I got a little nervous about. And Secretary Salazar got up front and he repeated it, and he said, "All right, I want to see you raise your hands. Now, if there's anyone here in this room that's opposed to this, please raise your hand." Not a hand went up. It was one of the most diverse groups that have been assembled from folks that had been outspoken in opposing some of these designations in the past that were now the champions, and also seeing that generational work. And I alluded to this in my opening remarks, but I also want to commend the work that Garrett and Max and Martin and so many others have done in New Mexico, because I've learned from our veterans now that they've come together to help protect our public lands and our outdoor spaces, and they're training younger generations to be anglers and to be guides. New Mexico has so much to offer, and especially with our public lands. And I just think that that's what's helping bring people together, is let's get people outdoors more. Now, I don't know that we're going to see any changes to Mount Rushmore, but we'll keep doing our work to build bipartisan bridges everywhere that we can. And let's just keep willing to share those stories and bring more people together. I think that's what we have to get done, Mark.
Great, thank you.
That was a joke, by the way, Mark. I didn't see you laugh.
No,
I
I
must not
laughed.
have done a good job there.
No, I laughed. I must have been on mute. Chairman Holland, how do we inspire the next generation of public land users?
We make sure they can get outdoors. Outdoors are meant for kids. Kids need to be out there at young ages so that they they grow up and that's what they learn to expect, right? I mean, I was so lucky. Every time I think about how fortunate I was, the summers when I would spend with my grandmother at Mesita Village out on the Laguna Pueblo, my cousins and my sisters and I, we'd get up every single morning and we would just be gone pretty much all day long, hiking to the top of the Big Red Mesa. I mean, if you get used to being outside, that's where you want to be. And I want kids to experience that and to understand nature more so that they can be the future advocates and activists that we need. I liked what Howard said when he said, we don't have to spend as much time. We were spending all our time advocating for this funding, and now we can put our efforts somewhere else. So where are those efforts going to go? And I think that one good use of everyone's effort is to make sure we find ways to ensure that kids get out into these open spaces. And I mean, right here in my district, it's so close, right? Valle del Oro is only like 7 miles from Albuquerque. We should have buses of kids going down there as often as possible so they can experience that. I can't say enough about our commitment to the outdoors. And I was really happy in 2018, it feels like we got a whole bunch more environmentalists elected to Congress, which I think helps everyone's job a lot more. So, I think I don't want to take up too much time. I think that's it.
That's great. Well, let's stick on that theme a little bit, Congresswoman Torres Small. Can you talk a little bit about access to public lands and equity and how we can do better by communities of color and low-income households so that they can experience public lands too?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things I love about LWCF is it really acknowledges all different types of public lands and provides an entry point for anyone. So whether it was Lab's Pool that my brother and I would walk to as kids, or whether it's providing key access points for wilderness or for that favorite hunting spot. There's all sorts of different ways that people can get engaged. And I think including community in identifying new projects, one of the, it's a good success when good hard work yields more good hard work. And that's what the Great American Outdoors Act does. It provides more opportunities to identify what new parcels of land we should invest in, to find more stakeholders, to get people involved, to help rebuild our economy by getting folks out there working on the maintenance backlog that we have. So that's all of the work that we have now to do as we make sure that there is equity and access. And to include more people in this success. We've already got such great leadership on the ground of folks who are building new voices for how we enjoy the outdoors together. And as a woman hunter, who, my dad growing up hunted, but he never took me out, he took my brother out. And so getting to learn how to hunt as an adult is really an exciting thing. You learn the Onyx app and you learn what it's like to go through the draw every single year. And being able to find more of those connection points, like our veterans who are coming out and advocating for the outdoors, I think is a great way to continue to build support and to guarantee that these strides will continue to build for new generations, just like, as I was discussing with LWCF, the work that's done in past generations.
Oh, you all are so wonderful. We are just blessed to have you representing us in DC. So thank you all. Can't thank you enough. We're getting close to the end. I think people are hungry based on all the food conversation that you started with. So let me just do a quick wrap. Again, on behalf of all of the co-hosts, thanks to the delegation, all of you. We are so proud of you and the work that you do. And thank you for this wonderful gift to public lands and to New Mexico. All of us on this call are really looking forward to putting this investment to work for New Mexicans and getting on to that business. So thanks again to all of you joining and to all the co-hosts. I hope we can all get together in person sometime soon. Have a wonderful evening. Take care. Bye.